I suppose I'll write this for others to read to get off my chest, since I definitely can't file it in my official report. It was the middle of the night and I was working a 24-hour surveillance shift in a nondescript guard shack. I radioed the county sheriff dispatch. "County, this is Ian Connor, doing a night watch by the Southwoods warehouse, checking in." Lana O'Malley, the nice old lady who ran the night dispatch, answered back. "You're coming in broken, hon, but I heard ya. Be advised, any backup from us might be unlikely in this weather. You take care, darling." 2 years ago, after I had been promoted to corporate security, I would have been mortified to be back here, right where I started my career. But now in the middle of a snowstorm out in the middle of nowhere, I appreciated the solitude and serenity more than ever. My investigation of a recent string of thefts from company warehouses had led me here. I was especially comfortable since I grew up in these woods. I also happened to be sitting on what used to be my family's land. It had been in the family since they came over from Ireland a century ago, but our cousin had sold it to the company for development. Thefts around here were not uncommon, usually jobless backwoodsmen looking to pay for their addictions. But these were different. Their modus operandi, or method of operating, was clever and methodical. And since they shot at one of our night guards a while back, they were also violent. The pattern I established showed they would likely strike here next, and take advantage of this blizzard, which caused a cancellation of all emergency services. I was on my own. As I looked around the 360-degree view through the tinted glass, I took note of my surroundings. The full moon reflected a brilliant blue light off the snow, illuminating the tree line of the South County woods off in the distance, behind the chain-link fence next to the shack across an open field. In the other direction, about 200 yards off, there sat a warehouse. Next to it, an old forklift, 3 yellow concrete pylons in the corner, and an old storage shed 100 yards to the right of that by the adjacent fence line, locked shut with a chain and padlock. As I grew bored, my mind drifted back to when I was a kid, visiting my great-great-grandma on this very land. She would gather me and my cousins around her and tell us stories of her childhood in Ireland and traditional folk tales. Many were lighthearted, some were dark and disturbing. She had lived to the age of 102 and had seen 3 creatures in her lifetime, passing after the turn of the century when I was barely 12. Growing bored, I cracked open the steel sliding door to feel the cold breeze. I began singing Granny Mara's favorite tune, Danny Boy. She would step out onto her porch and sing it every time there was a snowstorm like this, before stepping back in, tucking me in bed and saying, "Sleep well, lad. Ye are safe now. I've sung the tune." The song was oddly joyful, with the unique Irish lilt, but was actually sad, mournful, even dark. "Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling." Suddenly, the guard shack shook and there was a sound like an explosion from the direction of the locked shed. I jolted to look in that direction, to see the doors shoved ajar, stretching the chain to its limits, possibly jarred by the explosion. The thought briefly crossed my mind that the thieves might be blowing their way through the fence to get on the property as I ran towards the shed, my Glock drawn and in my hands at the low ready position. Locals usually used TNT to illegally catch fish, so it wasn't unusual. Suddenly, I saw a flash from a spotlight from the edge of the south woods off the property. It was definitely the thieves casing the place. But then what was by the shed? From the other direction, it seemed like I saw something streaking by me towards the warehouse, but the wind quickly blew the snow back over any tracks there might have been. I got to the shed and I struggled with my cold hands to get the keys and unlock the padlock. I led with my gun and flashlight as I cleared the shed. Nothing was there but a new hole in the ground, seeming to open to an underground cave. I relaxed. A sinkhole. They were common around here and could be caused by small earthquakes. The only thing that didn't make sense was that sinkholes caved into the ground. This looked like something had burst out. I couldn't think of any creature in the Ozarks that could do that. Puzzled, I locked the shed back up and went back to the guard shack, intently watching the tree line where the spotlight had shone. I spent a moment taking a brief visual inventory once again of my surroundings. The warehouse, the old forklift, the 3 concrete pylons, a small black fire hydrant in the middle of them, facing me. I saw another flash from the tree line. 2 headlights lit up and a radioed pickup truck trudged creepily through the snowy field right towards the locked gate next to my shack. I grabbed my radio and tried to contact the county sheriff's dispatch, but the storm caused heavy static. I ducked low and I put my hand on the butt of my holstered gun, though the tinted glass hid me from outside view. In the back of my mind, something else bothered me. A black fire hydrant. My mind must be tripping this late, I thought. I had to focus. I slid the door barely open and I listened through the howling wind. I heard the truck squeak to a stop in front of the gate, and 2 chubby figures clambered out of the back. I heard a loud, familiar hooting and hollering, and my heart sank. The Murphy brothers. No one had seen them since high school, when they had stopped coming and moved further back in the woods, and much to the relief of all of us. They were your typical violent, petty criminals. Anything they could do, they would do. And right then, I was between them and a wealth of valuable copper wire and propane. I recognized the 2 hairy beasts, Billy and Joe. Their brother Kevin must have been doing the driving. He was the brains of the operation. Billy walked up to the padlocked chain and prepared to cut it. Then the truck engine cut off and Kevin stepped out and yelled, "Y'all hold up. That generator by that guard shack is running. You reckon there might be somebody in there?" Billy lifted his bolt cutters like a weapon, and Joe pumped a shotgun. My adrenaline pumped and I prepared for a fight. I drew my gun and I reached for the steel sliding door. I began to pull. And then there was a slamming noise on top of the shack. I looked up and saw 2 small, round dents in the solid steel casing. I didn't even have time to consider what could possibly do that. But then I realized the black fire hydrant that appeared from nowhere. I turned and it was gone. Suddenly, I forgot about the Murphys. My wild mind imagined a short black creature with short arms, not nozzles on the side of a fire hydrant. I heard Billy stop. "You hear that?" A loud rumbling growl came from above me. Joe screamed and pointed, but when his brothers looked, they saw nothing, and there was silence above me. The thing was gone. "What'd you see, boy?" said Kevin. Joe was pale. It was little and black. It had a big mouth full of razor teeth. It looked at me like I was dinner." Billy and Kevin laughed, but then Joe screamed, dropped his gun and fell forward. A chunk of flesh was missing from his back, along with his coat and shirt. His brothers were laughing so hard, it took them a second to act. In that second, I saw it. It looked at me with a sick smile and a mouthful of blood. Small, black as coal in 2 large empty spaces where eyes should have been. It ran off behind the truck. The brothers turned in all directions, yelling incoherently. Now the memories all came back. I brought it here. I sang Danny Boy. They say when you're about to die, your life flashes before your eyes. It's true. I remembered all of Granny Mara's stories. How she told me on her deathbed that the tales of leprechauns, fairies, and elves were elaborated to sound palatable. But there were true things, fearsome things, that were real. I thought she was losing her mind. That age and senility were taking their toll. She went on. It followed us here from Ireland. It came on the ship. My own granny was the peacekeeper. Kept it happy by singing Danny Boy when it was stormy out. But when she fell ill, it became a terrible thing. Tearing at the ship and threatening to sink us all. It did. but then I took a roll. It can smell your blood, you see. It knowed I was her kin. So, I stepped out on the bow of the ship one stormy night to save us all. I did. Sang the most lovely rendition of Danny Boy, if I aren't bragging myself. I calmed it down and there was peace once again. Now Granny Mara looked me in the eyes. Now you listen, lad. I didn't have any daughters. I had no one to take my place as peacekeeper, as was the tradition for hundreds of years. It's on you, lad. It's on you. And then she mustered her last words in a form of old limerick. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Kevin yelling, "You there in that shack? You better talk or I'm gonna start shooting. What's this thing and what did it do to Joe?" Now I stood the door open and I spoke loudly. "This is Ian Connor. You remember those stories Granny Mara told? Well, the truth was worse. That thing is mad and it's mad at you, not me. Say your prayers, Murphy boys." Kevin yelled, "Connor, you liar. I don't know what." There was another growl from behind the truck and I smiled as I spoke. Mara told me an ancient limerick. It goes like this. "Short and black and void of eyes, he'll give ye quite a fright. In cold and wind with somber growl, he only shows at night. He'll be your best friend or worst fear, so just don't make him mad, my dear. He'll not leave you dead, but you'll wish you were. Just blackness and void, no skin or fur. If you treat him with slight, he'll do this from pure spite. From your flesh he'll take a bite. Your blood he can smell, he knows who's your kin. From there he'll decide if you are foe or friend." Kevin's face twisted in rage and he lifted his shotgun. "If that ain't the biggest load of hogwash I ever heard, boy, you're dead." He pumped the gun and he lined up his sights, but dropped it as he screamed in pain. The dark creature latched onto Kevin's right leg below the knee and was violently writhing, digging its black fangs even deeper into the flesh. It gave a satisfied low growl as it did, as if savoring a juicy feast. Kevin begged for help with crying pleas, but Joe lay moaning on the ground and Billy stood frozen in shock. Kevin was tough though. He reached down, grabbed his shotgun, and put the front of the barrel square on the creature's forehead. He froze a moment when it looked up at him, and while clenched on his calf, smiled a wide, toothy grin with sickening glee. Kevin half screamed and half spoke. It's smiling at me. Die, you sick little demon freak." He pulled the trigger and blasted the creature point blank. For a second, I was worried. If it was dead, at least it had helped my odds of getting out of here alive. I couldn't see through the smoke and swirling snow. There was only silence. And then I heard an even deeper, louder growl. It was alive, and it was madder than ever. I yelled through the blackness, "You done messed up now, Murphy. It was just having some fun. Now you made it mad." Kevin yelled, "No, it can't be, no!" I saw the gun seem to fly from his hand, heard the sound of crunching metal and the glint of something flying through the air. From the roof of the shack above me, there was a loud metallic thud, and then the gun fell in the snow next to my open door. The barrel was twisted backwards with teeth marks on the wooden stock. It was apparently bulletproof and strong. Whatever it was obvious how it had survived for ages under the earth. It was from a different era, and survived every cataclysmic event that made even the dinosaurs go extinct. Some of the strangest creatures ever discovered had been found deep in caves under the earth. This one topped that list by far. The wind calmed and we could all see clearly. The creature was sitting like a dog glaring at Kevin with its disturbing grin. It's playing with its prey, I thought, and then it lunged at Kevin's face faster than he could react. The impact knocked him to the ground, and it scratched and clawed at him. Billy snapped out of his trance and ran to kick the creature off of his helpless brother. As he reared back his leg, the creature lunged through the air and caught hold of Billy's overall strap. It swung onto his back and began tearing and biting as Billy screamed. When it had had its fun, it jumped into the cab of the truck, tearing and destroying the interior as the old vehicle shook violently. The Murphy boys ran, limped and hobbled towards the woods, whimpering from pain and fear. And then the truck sat still. Everything went silent. I grabbed the radio and I pressed the button. "Dispatch, Lana, Ian Connor here." I froze for a moment. What would I say? If I had said the truth, I would sound crazy. I looked at the truck. My family had managed this thing and kept it contained for centuries. It was my turn now. Lana spoke over the radio. "You okay, Connor? You sound under duress." There were emergency codes she was referring to, but I ignored it. "Oh, it's just the Murphy boys, Lana. They're running towards Battle Creek Road, screaming some nonsense. It looked like they took some kind of beating. You might need to dispatch EMS and both of your deputies. I'd probably also call the head shrink down at the county hospital and give him a heads up." Lana sounded skeptical. "Will do. Sounds like there's more going on. I suppose you don't care to elaborate." I kept it short. "Don't care to." Lana was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Always some weird goings on down there at the Connorland. I knew when not to ask. Besides, it seems like anybody that ever got hurt down there had it coming. Like the Murphy boys." I wrapped up the conversation and collapsed in my chair. I finally took a deep breath, but I didn't take my eyes off of the truck. I didn't see anything in the cab, though. There was a loud slam on the roof of the shack. It was up there, and I could hear its quiet growl. I didn't reach for my gun. There would be no point. I recall the last few lines of the limerick. "Your blood he can smell. He knows who's your kin. From there he'll decide if you're foe or friend." I heard it gargle out a noise. Mora. I was shocked it could talk. It was an intelligent being. I answered, "What do you want?" It spoke, or rather growled an answer. "Mora T-Glock." What was it saying? T-Glock? I remembered, it was Irish Gaelic. It meant family. I answered back in my rusty Irish. "Ta, Mora T-Glock." Yes, Mara is family. I asked, "Cad Ba Mithlee, what do you want?" It answered, "Danny Boy." Of course, it wanted to hear me sing Danny Boy. I recalled a mournful verse and I sang, "But when ye come and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead, as dead I will may be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and saying, 'Av there for me.'" It let out a low, satisfied rumble, almost like a cat's purr. It punched the roof and said, "Aris," again. I answered but asked a question myself. "Are we friends?" Silence for a moment. "Yes, we're friends." I sang it one more time. I sensed silence on the roof, so I dared to step out and look up there. It was gone. And then I turned to the shed as I heard a loud noise. The door had been pulled shut and it was gone. For now. That was a year ago. Ever since then, every time there's rough weather, I volunteer to work out here, in the guard shack that I'm riding in now. The thefts by the local criminal elements have stopped completely, since word spread about something terrible happening to the Murphy boys. I've got a sign out now. It's snowing, and I hear scratching at the door.